Okay, in this video I'm answering a question I had from somebody who wanted to know how they could cut their applique pieces to in with the cutwork tool with their machine, because the particular project they had numerous blocks that all had the same motif on the block but in different fabrics. In fact, I'll bring up the actual quilt because this isn't actually the pattern because it's copyright. I've just done a rough drawing of it to show you the process. But this process would apply to any applique design that you had that you wanted to cut the pieces out with your cutwork tool. And I'll just bring up the image here of the quilt. Now, this is called Dancing Maidens, and you can purchase this. It's not very expensive for the pattern, and it's designed to be done applique on there by hand. But this person wanted to do it with their embroidery machine and also be able to cut out multiples of the same motif in one go. You can, with the cutwork tool, cut through about 5 layers of fabric, even with a backing of a Lisafix on the back or something like that. So you could stack up 5 different coloured fabrics and cut 5 of these shawl parts at once, for instance. You need, actually, for this whole quilt, you need 24 copies. So you would, stack up your fabrics multiple times and cut them out, but it would still save you a lot of time to cut out in multiples. And same with the hair piece and the lower part. It's a very pretty quilt, so if you're interested at all in this quilt, I'll put the link to it down below. So because it's copyright, I haven't actually used the real pattern, but I've done a rough drawing of it so that we can get a good idea of how it works. So I'll just minimize that now, and here we are with my rough drawing. At first glance, you would think that you would use the advanced applique tool that's available in our software, and I might just mention I'm in version 8 at the moment, because the person who asked the question has version 8, but you can do this equally in version 9. For the applique, as I said, you would think that you could do an open object here, and then another open object here, which starts here and goes around for the shawl, and then a closed object for the hair. And that would work for a satin stitch border, but the person concerned wanted to do blanket stitch. The problem with doing open objects with blanket stitch is your blanket stitch ends here. I zoom into this part. Your blanket stitch will end at these 2 points, and the teeth will come inwards to the inner part. Then for the shawl, the blanket stitch will come around here, but the teeth will go this way, inwards to the shawl. So there will be nothing actually anchoring down this top edge. If you were doing satin stitch, it would straddle that line, and so half the satin stitch would be on this side and half the satin stitch on that side. So it would cover this edge of this lower fabric. But with blanket stitch, it won't. So in actual fact, you've got a couple of options. You can just do a normal applique but use a closed object, and that will have the teeth coming of this lower part, have the teeth coming in, and if you have the closed object, you'll have the top line hit, and the teeth will come down this way and seal off that top edge of that coloured fabric. And the same for the shawl, the teeth will be going in. So I'm going to demonstrate that first. So we'll start with, and so we don't need the advanced applique, we can go straight to our applique tool and digitize our areas. So we're going to choose, we can't actually choose a stitch here, but if we right click on the applique tool, we can actually set up what we want in our object properties box. So our cover stitch we want as a blanket stitch. And that automatically takes the tack down out, because if you had a tack down underneath your blanket stitch, you would see it through. We do want a placement line for where we want to place our fabric pieces. So we've got to create our applique first. so that we can, and then create our cut line. So I'll be working through the applique process first. All right, so now we want the offset. We might need to change the offset. At the moment, it's going to the inside. So we'll go OK. And generally speaking, when you digitize blanket stitch, the direction you digitize will affect which way the teeth will go. So we're going to go clockwise because that will put the teeth facing inwards. So let's get our applique tool. We've got that, and we'll just start here. So a left click there, right clicks around the curve. And I'm just going to do this very roughly so that you get the idea, because you don't really want to see me clicking for ages on this. You actually want to see what to do. And so I've got far too much of a curve down there. I'll fix that in a minute. And because it's a closed object, I don't have to click on the first node, so I can just hit enter. And there's my applique stitch facing in. And as you can see, the offset is correct because it has gone to the inside. So if I go back to the object properties, so if I right click on that and click on object properties, the offset was on the inside and we went clockwise around the object. Okay, I'm just going to do one over here to see if going anti-clockwise does actually put the teeth going outwards in version 8. I can't quite remember. It's so long since I've done just a basic applique. All right, so we will close that and get our applique tool again, and I will, because we set up the object properties first, no, it's still going to the inside. So it doesn't matter which direction you go when you're using the applique tool, so long as you've got that offset going to the inside, which is really handy. I know with the open object tool and using the advanced applique and an open object, it did matter which way I went. So if you have any issues at all with your blanket stitch, try digitizing in the opposite direction. That may help. Anyway, we'll get rid of that one, delete that, and I'm just going to reshape this one a little bit to flatten this out a little bit in the middle. Okay, it's got a little bit of a bump there, but that doesn't matter. We've got the general idea. So we've got that object. Now we want the next object. So we're going to go click off, so we've got nothing selected, get our applique tool again, and this time we need to digitize on the same line we digitized here. So I'm going to ignore the black line except for the rest of it. So we're going to start, and we're going to go straight across here, straight across the hair. So I'm going to start up here. I probably should have used a different color. Now here I'm going to zoom in because I'm going to actually follow that exact line of the embroidery, not the drawn line, so that they actually butt up against each other. Okay, now I've followed that, I can continue on. And enter. Okay, so now, as you can see, I've got teeth facing each way to cover those raw edges. So that's one way of doing it. And then we've got the hair. Actually, what I should have done was go around the hair here. So I'll undo, well, I'll reshape it. So we'll select that and we'll reshape it. And I will get a square node there for the point down the bottom here. And then I will get I'll move that, I'll get it as fairly accurate, but it's not going to be perfect. I'll put a square node there and bring that across to here. Yes, that's how I wanted it. and we'll put a square node there and bring that across to there. And I can probably get away with another square node here. I might just put a curved node there to bring that out a little bit. That's better. Close enough. So as you can see, yes, you've got the blanket stitch heath going around there. Now in the original pattern, the hair was much more detailed than this. It went in and out. So it may not give you a very nice blanket stitch edge, but we'll talk about that later. I might just put a curved node there and bring that out a bit. And I don't really like this really long stitch here. One quick way to fix that is to put an extra node and just drag it so that you've got a little tiny square. There's two nodes there, one here and one there, and that gives you a tiny little square end, and that gives you two shorter. You just need to play around to get that looking nice. You might have to fiddle around a little bit till you get it, till you're happy with the positioning. It was okay when I started. Now I've mucked it up, haven't I? To try and get them even. That's probably as good as I'm going to get it, but that looks better than the one long stitch. So you might, that corner's okay and that corner's okay. So sometimes on a sharp corner you might need to fiddle and add extra nodes to get a nice corner. All right, so then you would do the hair, but if it was too detailed and you wanted to do it in satin stitch instead, then you could. However, then you would not want to have the blanket stitch going around here because your satin stitch would cover all of that. There's always lots of different ways of doing things. It's the final look that you want. I'm going to assume that we can do the hair in blanket stitch as well for this exercise right now, and I'll go back and do a satin stitch one later. So I'll now digitize the hair. So I'll get my applique tool, and remember we set it up so we don't need to change anything. So where will I start? I'll start here, and I'm going to do right clicks all the way around to get a nice curved shape. And as I said, I'm not doing it super accurately. I'll probably put a square node in. Now here I have to start following backspace. I have to start following this actual embroidery here. So I'm going to put a square node there and a square node there and a round node about here and a square node there. So left click in other words, a left click there. Now if I zoom in and remember that I had, well, let's see if we can get away with one click. So I'll left click there because the teeth will be facing in the other way. And I'll put a left click there. Oh, backspace, I need a right click to keep on there. It's better. Let's put a left click there. Left click there. Now I'm going to have to start with right clicks to get on this curve. And as I said, I'm following that embroidery, not my drawing line. Let's see what happens when I left click there. Pretty close. Oh, I've gone in the wrong direction. Backspace, backspace. I'm following the head. Okay, I think I can put a right click there and enter. Oh, do I have to click on there? Enter. There we go. Got it. So as you can see, the teeth are not always lining up, and sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. So I'm not really sure I like that effect, even though the colours will be different, and you would choose a thread that blended with your fabric so it wouldn't be so obvious. I'm thinking I would have chosen a satin stitch for the hair at least, but we'll leave it as is for now. So now this is an applique. If we go to individual objects in our, colour blocks in our, we've got a placement line and then the cover stitch, a placement line, then the cover stitch, and a placement line and the cover stitch. So that would be very easy now to cut the pieces, put them over the placement line and stick them down. You can either have some Velize Fix on the back of your fabric before you cut them, and then use a mini iron to iron them in place, or you could spray the back with some spray adhesive and stick them in place, and then do your blanket stitch around. I'll do the cut lines later, but I just want to go through the different applique options. So each object, we've got them in the right stitch order. We're going to get this one placement line go down for this one. We will place our fabric there and then stitch with our blanket stitch. Same for the shawl and then for the hair, in that order. Now, the problems. If you don't get this super accurate, you could get some gaps here between the fabrics. You could, and also, as I said, you can get this funny looking where the blanket stitches don't match up. Then, and even down here a little bit there they do, and here they match. So, you know, it'd be nice if they all matched or they all didn't match, but it's impossible to get that perfect because of the shapes. So let's change the hair. So we'll undo the hair and we'll change, redo. We'll go to the object properties of the hair, I should say, and let's change that to a satin stitch. And by default, it will automatically go to the center of the design. So it's going to straddle over both edges. And you could, in fact, use a tack down with this one, because it'll just be a zigzag tack down and it will just save you having to use an adhesive or the Velize Fix or whatever for the hair at least. So we'll apply that. Okay, now the problem now is that we've got some blanket stitch from around here showing. So we'll go okay with that, and let's choose this object here and reshape it. So what we want to do is get rid of the blanket stitch going here. Now we could just make this then an open object, but it couldn't be an applique. But what we can do is just make the applique go under the hair across here. So we will just need to remove these nodes. So I'm going to see if I can box select them. Yep, got them all, good. So if I delete those nodes, I'm not sure, oh, I'm hitting the wrong button, delete. So now our blanket stitch goes under there, and if you can imagine the fabric in here, let me just go back to the object properties for the hair, and let's choose a colour. Let's choose black, that'll be down the bottom. Okay, and so we've got a colour in there, we'll apply that, and because we've got our show fabric icon here highlighted, the fabric is showing. So close that, and as you can see, that will cover that bit of blanket stitch, so that gives you that nice neat finish instead of having little teeth down around here. You can go one step further to get rid of the actual blanket stitch under here, in case you're worried about it showing through or lumps showing through, and that's by using the partial applique tool. So that is in the edit toolbox, so we'll go to the edit toolbox, and we have got a remove overlaps for applique, remove applique overlaps tool. Now it's grayed out because I've got nothing selected. So what I need to do is select. So I'll just box select. That's got it. Now our remove applique overlaps is available. We can click on that. And as you can see here in the shawl, the actual blanket stitch has been chopped either side of the head. Now to see it even more clearly, I can hide the applique fabric and we can go in here, and all we've got is a placement line going across there now. We haven't actually got any teeth there. So that makes it really easy to have a nice finish and not have the blanket stitch there. So you could have done the same with this one here. You could have gone straight across here instead of coming around the curve, and you could have had the blanket stitch removed from there. It means you've got your fabric under here though. That's fine if you've got darker fabrics on top, like the black hair on top will most likely hide that placement line and the layer of fabric of the shawl. But if you had a lighter fabric on top, that wouldn't work because you would see the fabric of the shawl under through the hair most likely. So that's another thing you need to consider. So the other option would be to just create an open object for the shawl, so that you could bring your blanket stitch in here and come around and bring it in here, and then when you cut your fabric you would use the cutting line from the hair to make your cut line, so that you didn't have any overlap of fabric here, but it would be covered by the satin stitch of the hair here. So let's have a look at that option. So we need to basically undo, really. Undo, 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 undo. Right. So here I have got, I'm actually going to delete that applique part. So it's selected. If I delete it, and I'm going to digitize a new one, and I want it to be after the base part and before the hair. So I'm going to actually use my jump to start and end, or my travel toolbar here, so that I can actually digitize it and it will be in the right order in the color film. So that's a really handy hint, save you having to move it from the bottom of the color film up. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the design, and then I'm going to go through color by color, which will help me get to the right spot. So the first spot, I need to be out of true view to do that. So the first spot will get me through the placement line, and then I'll go through another color, which will get me through the blanket stitch. Then that's where I want to be, at the end of the blanket stitch for there, when I start this new piece here. Okay, so let's change this now to an open object. So I'm going to create my open object. Right, so I'm going to use a different color so that we have a stop. So I'll select my color, I'll select my digitize line and an open object and blanket stitch. And as I said before, oh, why have I got open freehand? I just want an open object. There we go. I'm going to go clockwise because this is an open object and I want the teeth to face inwards. And I will need to go in, and because I only set the parameters in the applique tool, I didn't set them in the digitizing tool, so I will have to go in and change the offset when I finish this. Just pretend I carefully went along that blanket stitch embroidery line. Enter. And as you can see, it's not offset, so we'll select it, and you can see it's in the right spot in the colour film, so we'll right click on it and we'll go to the object properties of the blanket stitch outline and we'll offset it and apply that. Now it's coming into the centre. You can see though that the teeth have gone at the angle of the line. They're not nice and straight like they were before we offset. That's just a little idiosyncrasy of the software. Not a lot you can do about that. Okay, once you've digitized the shawl as an open object, you need an ordinary object to close that hole, and we've still got an applique for the hair, so we're going to have to select that applique and break it apart in the edit toolbox and delete the placement line and the tack down line. So now we've got two ordinary objects forming an enclosed area, or actually two enclosed areas, the hair and the shawl. So as I said, I've left the base part as an applique, and I've got the shawl and the hair. So now I'm going to go to select both of those and go to the Advanced Applique tool in the Digitize section. And I can now put colour. So place fabric and colour. Place colour in patches. I'm going to go down and get some black for the hair. And I'm going to choose a pink for the shawl. And go back. Now I'm just going to check on the object properties for the blanket stitch in particular. So set stitch types manually, and I'm going to choose the shawl area. So it's got a placement line, it's got a tack down line. I don't want that, so I'm going to deselect that there and go back. All right, so now if we go to individual objects, nothing's happening. I've got to close this, right. So now if I go to individual objects, you see the applique section for the body. So you place the body part, then the fabric, then and then stitch the cover stitch, and then you've got the whole applique here. So if I go to the individual, you'll get the placement line for those two parts. You'll stick your fabric down, and then there'll be a tack down line for the head, and then the cover stitch for the shawl, and then the cover stitch for the hair. So that will work. So depending on the look you want, you can use all of those techniques, some of them, or any of them, or all of them I should say, to create the look you want in your applique. I'm going to do the cut line section in part 2, as this video is getting very long. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll get on to part 2 straight away.